Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. Thank you for joining us for another Flycast Partners webinar. Today's webinar is on BMC's Client Management, presented by none other than Kyle Hamilton. Kyle is a software engineer for Flycast Partners with well over 25 years experience in the IT service management space. His career started as a network engineer for Pro Systems and was quickly hired by Network Associates as a professional services consultant, where he delivered ITSM solutions all around the world for thousands of customers. Kyle's primary focus is on ITIL processes and architecture. His extensive knowledge of CMDB and asset management projects and deals with automation and management solutions such as BMC Client Management and BMC Discovery. Kyle has been a certified consultant for Front Range, Peregrine Software, BMC Remedy Force, Service Desk Express, BMC Discovery, BMC Client Management, as well as many others, and ITIL certified in Microsoft MCSE. Before we get started with today's presentation, Kyle, let me introduce our organization. Flycast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience. Founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of experience in the IT space, we took the best ideas from these collective experiences and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, workload automation, capacity optimization, and discovery, all using ITIL best practices. Our professional services can easily scale up or down to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your organization's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on your normal day-to-day operations, saving you both precious time and money. I encourage you to visit our website for upcoming presentations and webinars, industry white papers that are downloadable for your use and sharing, infographics. Take a look at some of the different tools that we offer in the ITIL and training classes that we may have. Take a look at our professional services page and check out something that your organization has always wanted to do project-wise, and maybe we can help you get there. As you can see, I have on our screen right now some of our latest upcoming webinars: Best Practice for Evaluating Service Management Software, ITIL Service Design, ITIL Service Transitions, ITIL Operations. By all means, please sign up for these presentations or refer them to your coworkers or friends. We encourage you to do so at your leisure. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our star today, Mr. Kyle Hamilton. Kyle, I have passed the presenting rights over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Rich. And with that, let me just say to everybody once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your location. I've got just a few slides we'll go through to kind of give you an idea of the modules that are available within BMC Client Management, as well as take a look and discuss a little bit about the architecture before we actually dive into the interface. So with that, let me talk first about the different product capabilities that BMC Client Management offers. So BMC Client Management is broken up into 5 core or main licensed modules. You see those represented by the squared icon. So we have 5 represented by discovery and inventory. So being able to take both an agentless and an agent-based inventory of your IT assets on your network. OS and application deployment, which, just as it sounds, allows you to deploy applications and operating systems. So that you can, build application packages for deployment. You can create desktop and laptop and server images that can be deployed with client management, as well as manage things like drivers and disk configurations and the like. There's also policy and compliance management. This module really supplements the discovery and inventory module by providing a software catalog, which allows you to normalize your software titles. So if you're looking to do software license management, and you don't want to have to build a software catalog from scratch, which in many cases that's what's required. The policy and compliance module can provide you with an out-of-the-box software catalog of approximately 18,000 applications, so that right out of the box you're able to start running valuable license management reports without having to spend time going through and digging out details of executable files and file sizes and file dates and the like, to have to define everything from scratch. It also allows you to create policy or compliance rules against your inventory, so that you can then see which of your devices in inventory is either compliant or non-compliant with any given policy, whether it be some software policy or some hardware-based policy, so that you're able to take the inventory information that you're discovering on your network via the agents and agentless discovery, and then being able to evaluate that inventory to determine how the inventory stacks up against, here's how it should be configured, how is it configured, and what are those deficiencies, so you know exactly what needs to be addressed and on which devices it needs to be addressed. There's also patch management. So the ability to automate your patch deployments. We patch a broad range of third-party applications so that you're able to address much more than just the Microsoft realm. So you can patch things from Sun Java to Flash to Adobe to Google to Firefox and on, so that you're not relegated to just being able to patch Microsoft Office and Windows OS. Provides a lot of the same capabilities that WSUS offers, which provides a much broader range of patch management capability in terms of third-party apps. And then last but not least, of course, remote desktop control. So the ability to log in remotely to any device that has the BMC Client Management agent installed, so that you could either overview or watch what a user's doing, or take over control and repair or fix some device on your own, and has full desktop control. So everything from being able to manage the registry to processes and services, all the way up to full-on remote desktop control is right at your disposal. Also included as a part of the inventory model you see called out at the bottom is also mobile device management. This not only allows you to discover and inventory your tablets and your mobile phones that are on your network, just like you can desktops, laptops, and other devices, but also allows you to manage your iOS devices. So your iPads and your iPhones can also be managed just like any other desktop or laptop machine with the agent installed, so that you can restrict capabilities on the device. You have the ability to issue commands to the device, wipe the device, block it, things like that, so that if you're having to manage mobile devices coming in and out of the network, this provides you with the capability to be able to actively manage those just as well as any other device. Now, one of the unique features with client management is it does allow you to manage devices regardless of their location. So in this particular example, you see almost every organization has at least a couple of employees that are seldom, if ever, in the office for one reason or another. They dial up via VPN every once in a while. Maybe they connect to get their email every couple of days, but they travel or they spend most of their time out of the office. And so you don't want to lose the capability to capture inventory and information off those devices, nor the ability to manage them, whether you have to push a critical patch to one of those machines or deploy a needed application. You don't want to have to wait weeks, if not months, until those users come back in the office to be able to address those deficiencies. So with BMC Client Management, as long as they have the agent, as long as they have an internet connection, you can manage that device, you can discover that device irregardless of where it's located or what you need to do. You have full capability to those machines that are both on the network and those machines that may be in an airport terminal or a hotel lobby on the other side of the globe. And with that, that covers all the background. And we'll quickly dive in and take a look at the BMC Client Management Administrative Interface and take a look at those 5 core licensable modules that I mentioned, and talk a little bit about the functionality available within each and show you what it can provide. The first thing I'll comment on, one of the things that separates client management from a lot of different tools is the ease of which you can get in and quickly get to the heart of what you're looking to do, whether it's take inventory, whether it's deploy an application, whether it's get your devices patched, whether it's start running compliance reports. They've taken the time to go through and build 2 different tools that are available to the administrator on the desktop you see here. One is called Incident Expert, which provides you with kind of text-based step-by-step instructions on how to perform a certain function or utilize a certain feature. And as you execute these, it'll actually walk you through. You'll see over on the left-hand side where you typically have your kind of standard Explorer style menu. Rather than forcing the users to have to go through and locate, which you'll see there's a lot in client management. So when you look at the menuing available to an administrator, it can be extremely cumbersome and extremely terrifying sometimes to see how much you have to look at, how many different capabilities there are. So by taking the need to navigate through all these different modules away from the user, allows you to simply indicate what it is you're looking to do, whether you need to run an inventory, whether you're looking to build a report, whether you're looking to connect your client management server into Active Directory or run an audit, you name it. It provides that admin with step-by-step instructions. So all they have to do is follow the instructions written at the top of the page. It's navigating them through the menu system so they don't have to locate the exact object they need to define or work with, and they can simply go through and you'll see the steps indicated up here at the top. So as they go through and complete these steps, it actually walks them very slowly through the process so that they don't have to spend a lot of time in administrative guides and you don't spend a lot of time in training sessions to be able to be up and running quickly and be proficient, and have some of even more of the advanced functionality taken care of besides the basics, with very simple walkthroughs that'll navigate you very quickly to those key features. There's also a wizard mode. So you see here is I come in if I want basically a wizard interface as opposed to the text-based interface. Same thing provided. So if I want to initially do a discovery of my assets on my network, there's an asset discovery wizard, and then it'll allow me to walk through page by page through a series of prompts to define, okay, here's the devices I want to go scanning for. Here's how I want to scan them. Here, the schedule I want those devices scanned upon. If I want it repeated on a daily basis or weekly basis, so that I can go out and start discovering my IT assets using simple wizard where I can go through and make some definitions and be up and running very quickly. Whether it's deploying, or taking inventory, deploying agents, creating reports, same kind of helpful feature for the administrator. So regardless of what it is you're looking to do, any of those core features are going to be addressed through one of those 2 tools, the Instant Experts or the Wizards, so that you can very quickly get up to speed in terms of configuring this and being able to effectively administer this without a lot of background time in manuals. Pardon me. So let's start first with inventory and discovery, because that's essentially where everything has to begin. And as I mentioned, in terms of discovery, it happens in 2 different modes. One is agentless discovery, which was the wizard we just saw on the desktop there. And that allows you to go through and agentlessly scan your network so that you can create a list of all the devices that are out there and connected. And you'll see this will locate anything from your desktops and laptops and servers to switches and routers and printers to voice over IP phones to mobile devices, tablets, you name it. If it's there, you'll be able to find out what it is and where it's located and what address it has. So that you can then take this agentless discovery, this map that it creates of all the devices, and then make decisions as to which devices you want to deploy an agent on so that you can actively manage and administer that particular device. You'll see only from the agentless scan or currently unmanaged, meaning they don't have any type of agent. We haven't had to deploy anything. This is just a first step to find out what it is we have to deal with and what it is that's in the estate. From here, then I have multiple options in terms of what I do with these devices, or how I treat this list. I can either go through and simply select devices from this list that I'm looking at, and go to an agent deployment or rollout from here by selecting those machines, or I could perform the same function right here from the desktop by going into that agent rollout wizard, and it's going to walk me through the same pages I would have gone through either way. So depending upon how you want to deploy it, whether you want to choose individual machines or whether you want to go through the wizard and blast it out to large groups at a time, it gives you options in terms of which machines you deploy the agents to, and on what schedule and how those agents are configured, of course. So the agent itself is what provides you the capability to be able to deploy patches and applications and effectively administer the machine versus just being able to pull information off of it. So these agents that get deployed to the devices, of which there are agents for Windows, Linux, and Macs, and you'll see here that it's defined within the wizard itself. Then I can go through and build agents to deploy to all of those workstations, desktops, laptop servers that I've discovered in my environment, so that I can actively administer those machines, and it creates an actual executable file that runs on those devices to install this agent. And you'll go through and configure everything from how it communicates back to the server, so you can configure it to work within your network, all the way to security configuration. So if you want to deploy certificates with your clients or your agents, so they can authenticate and identify to the server via certificates, you can do that. You have control over the user interface in terms of what the end user is going to see. In terms of BMC Client Management, do they get to see the system tray icon? Do they get to see software and patches being installed, or is all of that suppressed and hidden from them? How do we log it? So you can go through and configure every little aspect of how I want this agent to actually behave once I deploy it to those machines. And then, of course, being able to go through and target a list of devices so that you can deploy it to groups of machines simultaneously. And here's where, if you've tied your BMC Client Management installation into Active Directory, where you'd be able to benefit from OUs and containers within your AD directory, so that you could target devices based on some membership in a group. So I could deploy this agent, for example, to OUs within my AD forest, or I could go through and identify devices by IP address or subnet range, or I can even create device groups and user groups directly within the BMC Client Management interface to be able to use, so that I can query machines out of inventory based on any of those inventory characteristics we've discovered. So we know we've got a Dell laptop, and we've got an IBM server, and we've got these different type Cisco switches. We can go in and write queries against that inventory, so that when it comes time to deploy a piece of software or roll out an agent or deploy a patch, I can also use the results of queries to target devices. So go into inventory and say, just pull out everything that's related to Dell and deploy an agent to all my Dell devices, or deploy it based on some operating system characteristic, so that I can go in and say, deploy it to all my Windows operating systems. So there's numerous ways that you can use, those targets, device groups and user groups, to be able to then select those user groups and device groups to deploy patches and applications out to users very easily without having to worry about addresses and subnet ranges and things of the like. Now, you also provide credentials to these agents. This is important, so if the users are locked out of their own devices, still have the capability to be able to deploy software and make the corrective changes that need to be made, even if the user doesn't have local rights or local access. And of course, being able to schedule the installation to take place, so that, let's put a test in here, so that as I go through and I create my agents that I'm going to roll out to my machines, and it does even have, you'll see, you can even use a verification step so it can actually run through all of your targets in this case, make sure that that agent is going to be able to log in successfully using these credentials and arrive at administrative access. So before you get to the point of actually deploying it, right away, do I need to add another set of credentials? Do I need to change the password or try a different ID? Because it's not working. So this will save you a step from having to come back and redo everything in the end. Then finally, of course, being able to schedule this. When do I want this to occur? Do I want to deploy right now? Do I want to wait until some specific time? Do I want to wait until they reboot or when they start up? That way you can easily schedule this agent rollout, or it could be a patch distribution, it could be an application rollout, at whatever time frame you want, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, multiple times during the day, and be able to configure each package, each patch, or each agent independently of the others. Now, you see, once you do an initial agentless discovery, the information you get back on the majority of the devices from the agentless discovery is very minimal. Let me select one. So that when I look at inventory for a particular machine using the agentless scan, unless I've provided credentials and authenticated, the detail you get back is very high level. Notice the hardware and software tabs aren't completed. There's very little detail beyond just knowing what it is and IP address and MAC address. And if you want to get more detail and really perform detailed queries against the device, you have to authenticate. In which case, we want to deploy the agent, then we have a lot more ability to query that machine so that we can pull more detailed information. So if I look at a machine with an agent installed, the inventory information I have once I authenticate and have that agent installed is much more granular and much deeper. So now I have not only additional details related to hardware and software for the device, but also detailed queries related to security configuration, things like firewalls and antivirus, as well as being able to then take the inventory and evaluate it against my policies or my compliance rules to see whether it's compliant or non-compliant with any of those policies. It's a lot more granular, deeper information once we get the agent installed and once we can start querying that device using those agent credentials we provide. Also be able to track not only things that are actively discovered, but also be able to input or import additional details related to financials. So PO and invoice information, warranty and support, contract information, costs and depreciation details, things like that can all be input here so that you can actively manage not only the discoverable attributes in terms of hardware and software, but also the financial attributes that may be necessary or coming from other tools so that you can actively track everything in relation to an asset, not just those things that we can actively pull off the machine. Now, it also allows you to take other devices that may be related. Example would be a monitor connected to a computer or a printer connected to a computer, attached devices that in and of themselves are not, they don't have their own address on the network. They're not, standalone devices. However, they are connected to a discovered device, and we want to be able to manage the cost and the support for monitors and printers, just like you do those things that can be discovered. So it provides the ability to go through and attach and relate devices to each other so that you can relate monitors and printers to computers. Those things can also be, you'll see up here, incorporated in the cost. So I can look at the cost of my desktop computer in this case, but it also then takes into account, I also have a laptop assigned that has a value with it. So that can then show me a total roll-up cost or the value of all of the IT equipment that I have currently assigned to my ID or my account. So I can go in and add additional devices related to it, or I could go in and remove these relationships so that I'm now back to looking at just the financials for just my desktop machine and not any of those attached or supplemental devices like laptops, printers, monitors, etc. Now you can also track and manage everything from support contracts to warranty, contracts, you name it, so that you can actually come in and attach those hard copy files here, so they're available here as well. In terms of inventory, I mentioned mobile device management. They do break it out separately. You find your mobile devices through the same process you find your laptops and switches and routers and everything else. However, they break them out separately into its own category in the menu, simply because many customers are going to then, as I mentioned, want to be able to manage these mobile devices by installing profiles and being able to lock these mobile devices down, just like you want to control their workstations and servers. And because there is a different format with profiles that get installed on the mobile devices versus an agent that gets installed, they've broken it out separately. There's steps to go through that are separate from deploying an agent, for example, versus going through and creating and deploying a profile to a mobile device. The end result being the same to the end user. They have a device that something gets installed on, and that whatever it is that's being installed is then going to restrict or control what they can do with that device, what they can connect to with that device, and what they can use on that device, so that you can restrict and manage your iPhones and your iPads and tablets, whether they be corporately owned or walking in the front door from home with your employees or customers. They can still have access to corporate resources very easily, and you can still manage and control those devices just like you can everything else on your network, and be able to report on those and treat iOS and your tablets and phones just like you can everything else in inventory. Now, besides inventory and discovery, you also have, once you get the agent installed, the ability to remote control. So the same agent that captures all the inventory information off the machine also gives me the ability to launch into the desktop and take over the device if I want to. So it gives me, excuse me, full control to be able to initiate a remote control session, log in, do whatever it is I need to do. As long as we got the agent on it, then I've got full control. And there's a toolbox available to me at the top that gives me options for locking screens and mouse and keyboard, and changing the resolution and color scheme, all in the effort to either avoid fighting for control of the screen with the local user, or having to send lots of screen information, resolution information back and forth over a slow remote connection. So you've got the ability to be able to manage how this remote connection behaves and operates. Now, you also have what's called direct actions that are available to you. So if you don't want to have to launch directly into full remote control and have to deal with all the screen refresh information, then you can easily use the direct actions to go in and manage the devices without having to pass all that screen data. So within client management, it allows me to go in and not only access that full-on remote control, but actually pull up individualized access to things like the registry, the file system, running processes, running services, so that rather than having to simply go in and take over control of that machine, I can go in and simply go right directly into the back end of a device and take it over, or do whatever it is I need to do, and I save myself all of that screen refresh data. So if I need to update the registry, if I need to shut down a running process, or maybe start some process up that maybe died, then it gives me the ability to go in directly to the device and make that change and do whatever it is I need to do with those processes, whether it be start, stop, or otherwise. But it saves me a lot of bandwidth when it comes time to actually manage, in terms of passing that screen refresh data. Now, as mentioned, you also take all the inventory information, all the inventory details you get back from that agentless scan, and you're able to create compliance or policy rules that can then be evaluated, so you can see how each device stacks up. Now, these policies and these compliance rules have their own section within the Explorer menu, and this is where you actually go in and create those policies or create those rules. Two different types are supported with client management. There's custom compliance, those rules that you create, craft for yourself, and of course there's things that are out of the box, which is referred to as SCAP compliance. And these are pre-built policies or pre-built rules that you can openly download from thousands of sites on the internet and be able to import those directly into client management so you can have pre-built compliance content that you can use to evaluate your machines versus having to sit down and craft all of all those policies, all that compliance criteria yourself. Now, what happens is when you go in and create a set of policies, you'll see there's some out of the box, like PCI compliance, for example. It defines exactly how a machine needs to be configured if that machine is going to be used in any way to process or handle credit card information in terms of what kind of minimum configuration it has to have. So they've taken these PCI rules, they've built these rules into client management as compliance policies so that after I go through and you can see which each of these is, it has to have anti-spyware installed and it has to be up to date in the last 30 days and on with antivirus, and their firewall has to be, enabled, right? So that I can go through and I can check for these different criteria to make sure that each of my machines that I have in my environment are configured appropriately in the way that they should be. In this case, if they're going to be processing credit card information, as an example. That then gives you the ability to not only look at it on an individual level, but you can also look at it on an enterprise level. So I can see out of all my machines in inventory, which ones are compliant and which ones are not compliant with any given policy. And I can take from any one of these dashboard views the drill down capability to be able to look at the individual machines that make up the graphical information displayed originally. So again, this points me to devices that are deficient in some way from corporate policy or corporate compliance, and it lets me know exactly how they're deficient, which rules or policies they're violating, and which devices need to be addressed, of course, so I know exactly what needs to be deployed, whether it may be a patch, maybe it's an application update, maybe it's simply a change to the configuration of the machine through the registry or through running processes, something like that, so that we can bring that machine back into compliance and make sure that this compliance dashboard is cleared and everything you're looking at is in the green as opposed to those that are in the red. SCAP compliance, as I mentioned, allows you to do the exact same thing. Big difference is you don't have to go through and create all the different policies or rules that get utilized when you're talking about SCAP jobs. You can go and download different zip content files, and you can see it's broken down typically by usage. And so are we talking about a domain controller? Are we talking about configuring Internet Explorer? Are we talking about a Windows 10 machine, a Windows 7 workstation or laptop? Each one of these can have specific content. So if I look at Windows 7 workstations, for example, I can then look at the SCAP rules that get downloaded, and this is what I mean in terms of pre-built content. Right? And it shows you all the different rules and policies. In this case, there's 270 rules that are defined that identify or basically detail exactly how a Windows 7 workstation should be configured for optimum security. Right? And it goes through and tells me exactly all these different rules, right, that we're looking at. I've got a description of each rule. What is it evaluating? What are we looking at? What are we verifying? So typically, if you're not using the SCAP content, you're not downloading these policies, right? This could be 270 could take you quite a bit of time to go through and have to define all this from scratch. By being able to go out to the web and simply download this content and install it in minutes, I can immediately run these rules against my machines and inventory to determine how I stack, how are my Windows 7 devices stacking up, maybe not against internal policy, but against best practice, against the general consensus, because this is SCAP is crowdsourced. This is universally defined, so that I can take this and use kind of these best practice policies to evaluate my machines versus having to go through and create my own. And there are reports that allow you to pull, content and results just like the dashboards on both custom and SCAP compliance as well. Now, as I also mentioned in quick order, that compliance module does one other thing for you. It also provides you with the software catalog. And the software catalog is that list of applications, software packages that are defined within client management, so that as you go out and do discovery of your machines, you're able to accurately categorize and identify that discovered software and licensing information versus having to go in and build, define this catalog from scratch, which in many cases is exactly what you have to do. You have to come in and you could certainly do it here as well, but having to go in and define all of these different applications that need to be identified. What you get from inventory is you get 5,000 or 6,000 different executables. That's what you see right up here. And you get, Excel.exe. That doesn't tell you what version is it, any specifics about the build or anything like that, because it's just simply pulling back a list of all the executables on the device, and then it's up to the administrator or the user of that tool to go through and have to build a catalog that can then accurately identify what is that version of Excel.exe with that file size and that file date. What does that indicate? By having a pre-built list of 17,000 rough applications out of the box, you don't have to build this list from scratch. And from day one, you have immediate and valuable information related to licensing, whether it be on everything from Adobe products to, of course, all the Microsoft products, Java, and you name it, so that you can immediately dive in and start, managing software licenses without having to spend weeks, if not months, building that software catalog from scratch, which is what's required in order for you to get accurate licensing information back out of the tool, is to be able to accurately identify, one version of Excel.exe from another, so that I know whether I'm looking at Office 2007 Professional or 2010 Professional, based on those catalog definitions that come through that software catalog. So an important piece of compliance is not only the rules, but the ability to effectively, normalize all your software inventory information so that you can make heads or tails out of it day one. Now, there is also LSN deployment module, being able to deploy applications. I mentioned and OSs out to desktops and servers in your environment. This does allow you to, either build those images directly, using client management directly. So you can actually come in and create or build a library of images, both sysprep and WIM images, directly within, grab these images and store them within client management. Or if you already have an existing image library, those images or otherwise, then you can also utilize your existing images and simply point to them so that you can use existing content, not have to rebuild it. We can just use the client management interface essentially to manage that library and allow you to deploy those images and target those images to certain devices, using the interface, but not having to rebuild them from scratch. Those images can then be deployed in one or two ways. You can either build a Pixie menu for your users, so as they go through and boot up devices to a Pixie boot, they can be presented with a boot menu of options that are available to them, whether that means just boot to the local hard drive or deploy one of the following images that's stored within client management. So all those images that you are managing with client management or you have built within client management and you're deploying can be created on a simple screen menu that can be selected at boot up time to determine which of those images in your library you wish to deploy to that particular machine. Now you can also go through and take your images and create or build a project. And much like for the other modules, there's a simple wizard on the home page and available through the context menu here and allow you to walk through the process of, I want to take this image, I want to take these drivers, I want to deploy it to this list of machines. And again, allow me to walk through kind of step by step just defining, what file I want and what image and where is it going, etc., so that I don't have to spend a lot of time, in the weeds trying to figure this process out. And that will allow you to also then go through and, like we saw before, then go through and target a list of devices within that product. So I could target all my Dell machines, or I could target all my Windows OSs, or I could target the marketing OU. Those same device groups and user groups we saw earlier in the agent rollout are available to me, through deploying everything that I might need to push out with client management. So again, it gives me the ability to target those images, whether at boot up time via menu, or deploy an image to, an entire subnet at a time by simply targeting those machines using either a query or through Active Directory tie-in. And then it'll allow me to actually create a project that I could track and manage, so that if I'm deploying, an image of Windows 7, for example, let's see, this is my Windows 7 deployment, then I can, track, status of the target. So have they received the OS image successfully? What's the current, status? You can create USB keys and, the actual executable files, so that if you need to handle somebody that's just completely disconnected, completely offline, and just unreachable, then this gives you the capacity to be able to, deploy an image from a USB key, either by connecting them back to the server on boot up, or putting the entire image actually on the USB key, so you could, have everything completely self-contained. Drop it to FedEx folder and ship it out to your remote users, and they just simply plug that USB key into their machine, boot it up, and allow everything to take place. So allow you to deploy both en masse and on demand, through those two tools. The software application packages can be managed in much the same way. Same kind of, interface for going through and building a package, building an image to deploy. Here you could deploy both MSI images for Microsoft deployments, as well as everything else, which is your custom deployment. So you can go and download, your installation files, your setup or install.exe files from your vendors, and pull them off the CDs and store those here in what's called a package factory, which is essentially your BCM server. And this will allow you to go through and take those downloaded files, right, and essentially put a wrapper around them so that you can control the installation behavior and how they behave, even if the vendor doesn't provide any of these options as a part of their installer. So being able to suppress the interface and, hide certain, prompts and things like that from the user, and allow me to go through and kind of define, all right, here's exactly, how this software needs to be configured once it gets deployed. And then once I configure those software packages, I go and download those files, and I have those here in my library, like I have Firefox, or I have Adobe Acrobat Reader. Then I can take these packages, and I can then go through a deployment or distribution wizard that will allow me to pick one of those software titles that I've built a package for, so Firefox or Adobe Reader, and say I want to deploy my Adobe Reader package to a group of devices, for example, and I can either accept some defaults in terms of when I want, the schedule to take place, or I can go through and define the schedule for myself. And again, I can use all that menu to say, okay, I want to deploy this Adobe Acrobat Reader package to all my laptops, for example, results of a query. And then, of course, defining the schedule to say, when do I want this application to be deployed to all my laptops? So I want to kick it off immediately, right now, and then just kill it, it's done. Or do I want it to run on some schedule or run repeatedly? And do I want to wake up devices if they're asleep? Or do I require them to be on? And you've got control to be able to define not only what gets deployed and to whom, but then, of course, on what time frame, so that you can break the traffic up on the network and make sure that you're managing things during primary business time. And much like the deployment of an operating system or deployment of a package, or a patch, I'm sorry, you'll have a little dashboard or desktop here where you can actively then track the deployment of that application, so you can see out of those devices I've assigned it to, who's received it, who's in process, which one's failed, so that you can easily manage that installation and go and correct issues that may affect certain devices. Now, I mentioned patches. Patches are that's that fifth module that you can license, and that is where you can actively go in and create automated patch jobs. We talked about deploying OSs and apps with the OS and app deployment module. This is really kind of the third deployment module. And this is where you can go in and automate your patch management process. So I can create patch jobs that will automatically patch my machines with, certain severity of patches, whether it's critical or all the critical and important security patches for certain applications. And this is where you can see that third-party list of apps. Everything from being able to patch Adobe to Apache Tomcat to the Apple tools, all the way to Citrix and Firefox and Chrome. So a broad range of third-party applications that can be patched outside of the Microsoft realm, so that you can keep your Java under control rather than having to have some other third-party tool to be able to manage that. If we're typically using like WSUS, for example. Then when I go through and I define, which patches I want, on what time frame do I want them to deploy? So again, that ability to schedule this deployment to occur, and then once again, being able to assign devices. Now I can either pull out individual machine, pardon me, so I can browse my inventory if I want as an alternative and say just deploy it to this one and this one and this one. Or again, I could use those groups of devices, whether it be AD containers or those queries that I've created to say deploy it to all my servers or all my laptops, and that way I can be sure that, for example, in this case, all my servers, they always have all of the latest critical and important Java patches that are available, and it'll allow me to come in here and manage, again, the execution of those patches, so I can see which patches are getting ready to deploy and to which machines are they getting ready to deploy to. So again, I can kind of track and manage the installation and deployment of my patches from this one console once I get that job created. And if I need to go in at any point in time and adjust something or make a change, whether it be to a product or maybe I want to update the patch window, and I want to say, rather than just do it on a Wednesday, maybe I also want to do it on, or let's say Wednesday and Friday. Oh. Let's see, we can do it daily. In that case, let's do Danny. Oh, there we go. So I do want to do on Wednesday and Friday of each week, or maybe I want to add Sunday to the mix, so that I can adjust that deployment schedule, make it a little more functional over the weekends as opposed to limiting it during the week. And I just update that one page and finish, and it'll just update my criteria for me, and I can continue to manage this deployment through this same console. So that way you can go through and set up these automated patch jobs, and very rarely, if ever, would you ever have to come in and manage or administer these unless you needed to make a change to an application that you wanted patched or to one of those patch filters, and simply be able to have everything kind of set it up and forget it. As new machines get added, they'll automatically be added to the patch group. As new patches are released, you've got your server set up to go out every so often and pull down the latest patches once a day, once a week, whatever the case may be, so that each night you're getting the latest information and comparing that against your inventory to determine what patches you need to be concerned about and how you want to treat it or handle those patches, where you want to deploy them immediately or some schedule or otherwise. So those are those 5 core modules, and as mentioned, you can also go through and see within reporting that you'll find reporting sections based on each of the, really with the exception of really remote control. There's not really any reports around remote desktop control, but everything from the SCAP compliance to your inventory reports. You have the ability to come in and run these reports, as well as use a wizard to create new reports. So if you want to, view the results of a compliance report, for example, you simply come in and run that report. I can look at it, look at all the results for all my domain controllers and see, it's currently in the process of running. I'll just show you this one here. And what it'll show me is how does this particular device stack up right? How does it compare against all of those downloaded rules, that downloaded content, right? And you can go in and you can see I've excluded some. So maybe there's some rules that don't apply to you and you don't want to see them showing up in reports. You can go in and exclude things that don't make any sense. But again, this is a great way to easily take some downloadable content and easily see how your devices stack up against, best practices in terms of hardware and software configuration, for example, or running that patch report. So against all those different categories, maybe I want just a summary of all my, hardware that was, discovered, for example. So you can easily go in and use the out-of-the-box reports. There's several hundred available out of the box across all those modules, and a wizard to allow you to create new reports. Very easy to get the information back out of client management that you may be looking for, regardless of whether it's about a patch or a compliance policy or a piece of software. It's very easy to construct those reports and start pulling data back out. Whether it's here, or of course there's a simple ability to also take client management and integrate it with third-party service desks. Of course, it integrates out of the box within the UI for both footprints and BMC Remedy Force, so that all this information then gets synchronized and shared with the service desk so that it's not only available here, it's available for linking to tickets and change requests and reporting in the IT service management tool of your choice as well. So with that, I would like to end my presentation and maybe open it up for any comments or questions that may exist. No, I was just going to say, that's a good overview of the different modules. But certainly, if anybody on the call today, there's often a specialized, need. So if there's some specific details you want to talk about, or you want to spend more time talking about, diving deeper on application management or one of those modules, that's where, please feel free to reach out to us at Flycast, and we could certainly set up a one-on-one where I myself or somebody else, another engineer, could get on the phone and another WebEx with you and walk you through more content specific to your needs.
And Greg agrees that it is a great overview that you just gave, so that's why there's no questions there. Doesn't look like we have any questions from anyone, so I want to thank you for your time today, Martin, and Kyle, and anyone else who was able to make it today's presentation. I know everybody has a busy day ahead of them, so with that being said, until next time, we'll see you in the next presentation, folks. Have a great weekend.